Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. Wednesday evening, I was catching up on work emails when my phone started ringing. Whitney's name appeared on the screen. She'd gone to Kelly's place for the monthly girls' night 3 houses down the street, and I assumed she was calling because she'd forgotten something or needed me to run an errand. "Hey, what's going on?" I answered. Before she could respond, I heard wine-fueled laughter in the background. Then her voice came through, loud and theatrical. Ladies, quiet down. I'm about to do something I should have done a long time ago." That's when I realized I was on speakerphone. The laughter died down, and I could practically feel a room full of women leaning in to listen. "Ryan, honey," she said, drawing out each word like she was performing on stage. "This marriage is finished. We're breaking things off. It's over for good." The silence on both ends was deafening. Then came the gasps and reactions from her audience. Someone whispered loud enough for me to hear. "Is she serious right now?" I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. My wife of 7 years had just ended our marriage like it was entertainment for her friends. This wasn't the first time she'd used our relationship as material for social gatherings. I'd lost count of the dinner parties where I was the punchline, the husband who supposedly couldn't do anything right, according to her stories. But this was different. This was her publicly ending our marriage for sport. The room was waiting for my reaction. They probably expected me to beg or ask what was wrong. That's what she was counting on. Instead, I kept my voice calm. "Okay, all the best." And I hung up. The house felt completely quiet. I set my phone face down on the desk and stared at my laptop screen for about 60 seconds. Then something crystallized inside me. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And Whitney had just shown me exactly how much respect she had for our marriage and for me as a person. I opened my banking apps. We had separate checking accounts, but she had a card connected to mine that she used for her shopping trips and those expensive girls' nights. Her mother also had access to one of my cards for her weekly grocery runs. Within 20 minutes, I'd canceled both cards and removed their access to my accounts. I changed every password and set up new security questions. Then I called Wells Fargo and put a hold on any attempts to add new authorized users. My phone started buzzing with text messages, but I ignored them. I had more important things to handle. I pulled up our joint streaming subscriptions one by one. Netflix first. I changed the password, deleted her profile with all her saved shows and preferences. Gone. Then Spotify, where she had dozens of playlists she'd spent hours curating. Changed the password, removed her account. Amazon Prime was next, along with Hulu and Disney+. Every service we'd shared, I methodically locked her out of. The premium cable package she'd insisted we absolutely needed for her reality TV marathons was costing us $180 a month. I called the cable company and downgraded to basic. The customer service rep seemed confused why I was calling this late, but I didn't care. I wanted it done tonight. I even went through our shared subscriptions for things like meal kit deliveries and the wine club membership she'd signed us up for. Canceled. All of it. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. My phone had been buzzing constantly, but I hadn't looked at it once. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time in years, I'd stood up for myself without arguing, without explaining, without begging for respect. She'd wanted to end our marriage for entertainment value. Fine. But she was about to learn that choices have consequences. The next morning, I was having my coffee and checking the news when my phone started going crazy with notifications. 23 missed calls. 61 text messages. I scrolled through them briefly. Most were from Whitney's number, increasingly frantic. A few were from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her friends trying to reach me. I deleted them all without reading and made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh orange juice. I ate slowly, deliberately, savoring the quiet of my own home without tension hanging in the air. The first few calls that morning were from Whitney, which I let go to voicemail. Then, right around 10, came the call I was actually expecting. "Hello." I answered, recognizing Patricia's number. "What did you do?" She practically screamed into the phone. My card was declined at Whole Foods. The cashier had to void my entire transaction in front of everyone. There was a line of people behind me watching. I could picture it perfectly. Patricia, who prided herself on her sophistication and her weekly organic grocery hauls, standing at the checkout while her card was rejected. The embarrassment must have been eating her alive. "Good morning to you too," I said calmly, taking another sip of coffee. "Don't you dare take that tone with me. The credit cards. What did you do?" I could hear her talking to someone else in the background, probably Whitney. "She ended our marriage last night. Publicly. For entertainment. So I simply accepted her decision and acted accordingly." There was a stunned silence. Then I heard muffled arguing in the background before Patricia came back on the line. "She says it was just girl talk. You can't just cut off family like that. I'm not family anymore. Remember? She made that very clear to a room full of people. Now she gets to experience what that actually means." I hung up and immediately blocked both their numbers. My phone showed those 23 missed calls and 61 text messages, but I wasn't interested in any of it. I had work to do. At 11 that morning, the locksmith arrived right on schedule. A guy in his 50s who'd been doing this for 30 years, according to the conversation we had while he worked. He didn't ask questions about why I needed my locks changed in the middle of the day on a Thursday, and I appreciated that. It took him about 45 minutes to replace both the front and back door locks. I stood there watching, feeling more in control than I had in years. When he handed me the new keys, I felt like I was being handed the keys to a new life. Around 1:30 that afternoon, I was working from my home office when I saw her car pull into the driveway. Well, technically my car that I let her use. I watched through the window as she got out, probably coming from her mother's place. She walked up to the front door with that confident stride she always had when she thought she was in control of a situation. She tried her key in the front door. It didn't fit. I watched her face go from confident to confused. She tried again, jiggling the key, probably thinking she was doing something wrong. Then realization dawned. She looked up at the door, then back at the key in her hand. She started pounding on the door. "Ryan, I know you're in there. We need to talk about this." I took my time walking to the door, let her stand there and pound for a minute. When I finally opened it, I made sure to position myself in the doorway. I wasn't inviting her in, and my body language made that clear. She looked terrible. Her makeup was smudged from crying. Her hair was a mess, and she was wearing the same clothes from last night. The outfit she'd probably thought looked so good when she was getting ready for girls' night. Now it just looked wrinkled and sad. "What is wrong with you?" she demanded. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone." "I've humiliated you." I almost laughed. "You announced our divorce to a room full of people like it was a comedy show. You humiliated yourself." It wasn't serious. The girls were talking about their relationships, and things got heated. I just got caught up in the moment. "So our 7-year marriage is just something you get caught up about when you need material for your friends?" She tried to push past me into the house, but I stepped back and started closing the door. "You can't keep me out of my own home. This house is in my name. You wanted out of this marriage. You're out of everything that comes with it. But where am I supposed to go? My mother is furious with me. I can't afford my own place right now. Should have thought about that before your little performance last night." The tears started flowing, but they felt calculated. She'd used crying to manipulate me for years, and I wasn't falling for it anymore. "Please, just let me come inside so we can talk about this like adults." Adults don't publicly humiliate their spouses for laughs. We're way past talking. "But I love you." Last night didn't mean anything. Last night meant everything. It showed me exactly how you see me in this marriage. Thank you for the clarity. I started to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the way. "You're being ridiculous. Just because I said some things when I was drinking doesn't mean I want a divorce. You didn't just say some things. You put me on speakerphone and announced to a room full of people that our marriage was finished and over for good. Those were your words, not mine." "Fine. I'm sorry. There, I apologized. Now let me in." The entitlement in her voice was staggering. Like a simple apology could undo public humiliation. "An apology doesn't fix this. You chose to end our marriage as entertainment for your friends. I'm simply honoring your decision." She finally moved her foot, and I closed the door. Through the window, I watched her stand there for another 12 minutes, alternating between crying and yelling at the closed door. When she finally called an Uber and left, I went back to my coffee and opened my laptop. I had an appointment with an attorney scheduled for tomorrow morning. I'd done my research the night before, found someone with excellent reviews and a reputation for handling divorces efficiently. I wasn't interested in dragging this out. I wanted it done clean and done fast. That night, I actually slept well, better than I had in months. No tossing and turning. No waking up at 3 a.m. with anxiety. Just solid, peaceful sleep. Friday morning, I drove downtown to Robert Kendrick's office on East Carey Street. The building was one of those old Richmond brick structures that had been renovated into professional offices. His suite was on the third floor, all dark wood and leather furniture. Professional, quiet, and expensive looking. But after 7 years of marriage, I knew what I was dealing with and wanted everything done properly. His receptionist offered me coffee, which I accepted. Colombian roast, served in an actual ceramic mug, not a disposable cup. Even the coffee felt more dignified than anything I'd experienced in the past day. Kendrick himself was exactly what I expected. Early 50s, well-tailored suit, confident handshake. He'd probably seen 100 cases like mine. So she announced the divorce publicly. And you're taking her at her word? The attorney reviewed my notes while sipping his coffee. Exactly. I want a clean separation of assets. No joint debts. No shared responsibilities. She wanted out, so she gets out completely. Any children or shared property concerns? No kids. The house is in my name only. Both cars are in my name. She has her personal belongings and whatever's in her individual checking account, which last I knew was about $340. He raised an eyebrow. She doesn't work full-time? Part-time retail job at the mall. Maybe 12 hours a week. She's always said my income was enough for both of us. Well, that's about to change. I left the office feeling confident about my position. Everything was documented, recorded, and filed properly. Kendrick had assured me that given the circumstances, this would be straightforward. The public announcement, the witnesses, her own words on speakerphone. All of it worked in my favor. I had a few errands to run that afternoon. Normal life stuff. Groceries, a stop at the hardware store, picking up my dry cleaning. It felt surreal doing mundane tasks while my marriage was imploding, but also oddly freeing. Nobody to text me a list of things she wanted. Nobody to call and ask me to pick up something specific she'd forgotten to mention earlier. When I got to the Kroger on Patterson Avenue around 2 that afternoon, I was thinking about what to make for dinner. Maybe a steak. I'd been grilling less because she always complained about the smell of charcoal smoke. I pushed my cart toward my car, planning my evening. That's when I saw her. She'd clearly put effort into her appearance today. Full makeup, nice dress, the works. The manipulation playbook was in full swing. We really need to talk, she said, stepping closer. I continued loading my groceries without responding. Please don't shut me out. I've had time to think about everything, and I realize how wrong I was. I met with my attorney this morning. Papers will be filed by end of business today. Her face went white. Attorney, you're actually serious about this? You said the marriage was finished and over for good. Why wouldn't I be serious? She reached out to touch my arm. Baby, I was drunk. The girls were being dramatic about their own problems, and I got swept up in it. I stepped back from her touch. So you're saying you only disrespect me when you're drinking with friends? That's supposed to make me feel better? That's not what I meant. Frustration crept into her voice. What did you mean then? I meant I wasn't thinking clearly. People say things they don't mean all the time. Not about their marriage. Not on speakerphone. Not for entertainment. The tears started again. Please don't throw away 7 years over one mistake. Marrying someone who treats me like a punchline for their friends was the mistake. Last night was just the wake-up call. Her tears stopped abruptly, replaced by anger. You're being completely unreasonable. It was one comment. One public, deliberate, witnessed announcement ending our marriage. With your friends cheering you on. I'm simply treating your words as genuine. I got in my car and started the engine. Where am I supposed to live? I can't afford anything on my salary. Should have considered that before breaking things off for laughs. I drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. That Friday evening, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. It was Brad, Whitney's brother-in-law. Man, what happened? She's been calling Jennifer nonstop, crying about how you've lost your mind. She announced our divorce publicly for entertainment. I took her seriously. Now she's upset that there are consequences. Wait, she actually said she wanted a divorce. Word for word. This marriage is finished. We're breaking things off. It's over for good. On speakerphone in front of witnesses. He was quiet for a moment. And now she's saying you're overreacting? That's the current story. Jesus. Jennifer's been feeling bad for her, but if that's what really happened, I have nothing to gain by lying about it. After that call, Whitney's sister stopped returning her messages. The family support she was counting on started evaporating as people heard the actual story. Sunday morning, I was having brunch alone at Pearlie's restaurant downtown. I'd chosen a table by the window, ordered the corned beef hash they're famous for, and was actually enjoying myself. Reading the news on my phone, sipping good coffee, no stress. The place was packed with the after-church crowd. Pearlie's always is on Sunday mornings. It's that kind of place where everyone in Richmond eventually runs into everyone else. I recognized a few people from our social circle scattered throughout the dining room, though no one had approached me yet. Word was probably starting to spread. I was reading an article about the local development plans when she walked in. The moment I saw her, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. She'd clearly planned this. She was dressed in her Sunday best, the kind of outfit she wore when she wanted to make an impression. Her hair and makeup were perfect. She scanned the restaurant like she was looking for someone, but I knew she'd already spotted me. This was all performance. "What a surprise seeing you here," she said as she approached my table, her voice pitched loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Every word carefully projected. "Mind if I sit down?" I gestured to the empty chair. "It's a free country." She sat down and immediately launched into her performance. "I've been doing so much thinking these past few days, and I miss you terribly. I know we can fix this if we just try." Several people were already watching our table. She was banking on social pressure and public sentiment to force some kind of reconciliation scene. "Have you now?" I took a sip of my coffee and waited. "Yes. What happened that night was a huge mistake, and I've learned from it. I love you so much, and I don't want to throw away 7 years over one bad night." The tears started flowing right on cue. She was really putting on a show, probably hoping that public pressure would make me look like the bad guy if I didn't respond positively. I set down my coffee and looked directly at her. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly." My voice was calm but clear enough for anyone listening to hear. "You want to reconcile with the man whose marriage you publicly announced was finished and over for good? The man you broke things off with for entertainment value in front of a room full of witnesses?" Her face started to flush. This wasn't going the way she'd planned. "That was a mistake," she said, her voice getting smaller. "No, a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did was make a deliberate choice to humiliate me for laughs. There's a difference." The restaurant had gotten noticeably quieter. People were definitely listening now. "Please, just give us another chance. I promise I'll never do anything like that again. Just like you promised to love and honor me when we got married. How'd that work out?" She looked around desperately, realizing that the public support she was counting on wasn't materializing. People weren't seeing a wronged woman begging for forgiveness. They were seeing someone who'd publicly destroyed her marriage and was now trying to manipulate her way back in. But I was drinking. People say things they don't mean when they're drinking. "So you're saying alcohol makes you disrespect me? That's supposed to reassure me?" She started crying harder, but it felt calculated and desperate. "Please don't do this to me. I can't survive without you. You should have thought about that before you decided our marriage was comedy material for your friends." I stood up and left money on the table for my meal. "I hope you find whatever it is you're actually looking for, but it won't be with me." As I walked toward the door, I could hear her crying behind me, but I also heard something else. Whispered conversations at other tables. Did she really announce their divorce at a party? That's terrible. Poor guy. Who does that to their husband? By the time I reached the parking lot, she'd followed me outside, away from the audience. Her demeanor changed completely. "You bastard. You made me look like an idiot in there." "You made yourself look like an idiot. I just answered your questions honestly. Nobody's going to want anything to do with me after this. That's not my problem. You created this situation. I hate you." She screamed loud enough for people walking to their cars to hear. "And there's the real you," I said calmly. "The one who hates her husband when she doesn't get her way. I'm grateful I don't have to live with that anymore." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In trying to force a public reconciliation, she'd instead given me the perfect platform to set the record straight about what had actually happened. The following Tuesday, the divorce papers were served at her retail job at Short Pump Town Center. I wasn't there to see it, but in a town like Richmond, word travels fast. By that afternoon, I'd heard from 3 different people about how she'd been served while working, how she'd broken down crying right there in the store, how management had to send her home early. I felt a brief pang of something. Not quite guilt, but maybe acknowledgement that this was hard for her. But then I remembered that phone call, her theatrical voice, the laughter of her friends in the background. The pang disappeared. By the end of the week, people in our social circle knew the full story. And it wasn't the version she'd been trying to sell. I ran into Megan Foster at the Trader Joe's on West Broad Street the following Wednesday. I was in the produce section, trying to decide between regular and organic bell peppers, when she approached me. She looked hesitant, uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure if she should say anything. "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened the other night at Kelly's house. That was really uncomfortable for everyone." I appreciate that. For what it's worth, most of us thought she went way too far. Nobody knew she was going to put you on speaker like that. But nobody stopped her either. She looked genuinely embarrassed. "You're right. We should have. It just happened so fast." And then when you hung up, she started crying and saying she didn't mean it. Interesting. She seemed pretty confident when she was performing for all of you. That's just it, though. It felt like a performance. Like she was trying to outdrama everyone else's relationship problems. I nodded and continued shopping, putting the organic peppers in my cart. The conversation told me everything I needed to know. Even her own friends recognized the situation for what it was. They'd been there, they'd heard it, and no amount of crying or backtracking could change what had actually happened. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing more stories about how Whitney had tried to get the girls' night group together again, but people were suddenly busy. About how she'd shown up to a friend's birthday party and the room had gone awkward and quiet. About how she'd posted something vague on social media about fake friends and finding out who's real, and gotten very little engagement. The social isolation was hitting her hard, and I understood why. She'd built her entire identity around being the entertaining one, the one with the dramatic stories, the one everyone paid attention to. Now that attention had turned into something else entirely. Patricia finally called me about a week and a half after the speakerphone incident. By then, Whitney had been living with her long enough for the frustration to build and the reality to set in. I almost didn't answer when I saw the unfamiliar number, but something made me pick up. "Ryan, please don't hang up. I'm calling from my friend Linda's phone." Patricia's voice sounded exhausted, strained in a way I'd never heard before. "I need to understand what happened," she said, sounding exhausted. "She's been staying with me, crying constantly, saying you've turned everyone against her. I haven't said anything that isn't true. She ended our marriage publicly. I accepted it. Now she wants to pretend it never happened. But surely you can work this out. Young people say things they don't mean all the time." She's 31 years old. That's old enough to be accountable for her words and choices. She made a mistake. She made a choice. A very public, very deliberate choice to humiliate me for her friend's entertainment. There was a long pause. "What do you want from her?" "Nothing. I want her to live with the consequences of her decision and stop trying to manipulate everyone into believing she's the victim here." The call ended shortly after that, but I could tell even Patricia was starting to see through the victim act. The mother who'd always enabled Whitney's behavior was finally running out of patience with it. The next few weeks followed a predictable pattern. Whitney would try different tactics. She'd show up at places she thought I'd be. She'd send messages through mutual friends. She'd even tried to use work as an excuse to contact me, something about needing information for insurance paperwork, which I directed through my attorney. Meanwhile, my attorney kept me updated on the legal progress. Whitney had hired her own lawyer, some guy who probably took the case thinking it would be complicated, only to discover there wasn't much to fight about. The house was in my name. The cars were in my name. We had no shared debt, no children, no complicated assets to divide. Her attorney initially tried to argue for alimony, but Kendrick shut that down fast. 7-year marriage where she'd worked part-time by choice, was capable of full-time employment, and had been the one to publicly end the marriage. No judge was going to award her spousal support. I started going to the gym again. Not obsessively, just regularly. 3-4 times a week. Lift Total Fitness in Midlothian became part of my routine. I'd stopped going years ago because Whitney always complained about the time it took, said I was being selfish for spending evenings at the gym instead of home with her. Now I realized I'd been slowly giving up pieces of myself to keep peace in a marriage that was never peaceful anyway. The weight started coming off. 10 pounds in the first month, then 15. By week 8, I was down 17 pounds and feeling better than I had in years. I had energy again. I wasn't dragging through my days anymore. I reconnected with friends too. Guys from college who I'd lost touch with because Whitney always found reasons I couldn't make it to their gatherings. She'd say she'd planned something else, or that she wasn't feeling well and needed me home, or just make it so unpleasant before I left that it wasn't worth the hassle. One Friday night, I met up with 3 college buddies at Buffalo Wild Wings in Willow Lawn. Just wings, beer, and conversation. Nothing fancy. They were careful at first, not wanting to pry, but eventually I told them what had happened. The speakerphone call, the public announcement, all of it. "Man, that's cold," one of them said. "But honestly, you look better now than you have in years. Like you've got your life back." And he was right. I did. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. I sat in Robert Kendrick's office signing the last of the paperwork, feeling nothing but relief. "Clean separation," he said, sliding the documents across his desk. "She gets her personal belongings and whatever was in her individual accounts. You keep the house, both vehicles, and all other assets. No alimony, no shared debts." And she agreed to all of this? Eventually. Her attorney advised her that fighting it would be expensive and futile, especially given the circumstances of how the marriage ended. I walked out of that office a free man in every sense of the word. The weight I'd been carrying for years was completely gone. I stood on the sidewalk on East Carey Street, downtown Richmond bustling around me, and took a deep breath. The air felt cleaner somehow. Everything felt lighter. My life had completely transformed in those 3 months. I'd lost 18 pounds at the gym, started eating better, and was sleeping through the night for the first time in years. The constant tension that had become normal in my marriage, that baseline anxiety that I'd gotten so used to I didn't even recognize it anymore, was completely gone. The house felt different too. Peaceful. I could watch what I wanted on TV without commentary about how stupid my shows were. I could eat dinner when I was hungry, not when she decided it was dinner time. I could spend a Saturday morning reading a book without being accused of ignoring her. I could work late without interrogation about who I was really talking to. Small things that I hadn't realized I'd lost came flooding back. I started cooking again, actually enjoying it instead of it being a source of criticism. I'd make elaborate meals just for myself, experiment with recipes, take my time. Nobody to complain that there was too much garlic or not enough salt, or why did I make this instead of that. Beyond the college friends I'd been seeing again, I'd expanded my social circle even further. Neighbors, colleagues, people from various phases of my life who'd gradually drifted away. I'd thought it was natural attrition, the way adult friendships sometimes fade. But once I was on my own, I realized how many of those relationships had been actively sabotaged. One neighbor, Greg, who lived 4 houses down, stopped me while I was checking my mail one day. "Hey man, I hope this isn't out of line, but we've noticed you seem a lot happier lately. Heard you got divorced." That probably sounds terrible to say, but good for you. That situation never looked healthy from the outside. It was jarring to realize that other people had seen it too. The dysfunction I'd normalized, other people had recognized as abnormal. Financial stress had disappeared overnight. Without her shopping habits, her expensive girls' nights, her need for premium everything, I was saving more money than I ever had. I'd look at my bank account and be shocked at how much was still there at the end of the month. Money that used to evaporate into her lifestyle now sat there, accumulating. I started looking at vacation destinations, something I hadn't been able to afford when I was essentially supporting 2 people on one income, one of whom didn't see the need to work full-time because your income is enough for both of us. I booked a trip to Savannah for the following month. Just me, a nice hotel, good restaurants, some tourist stuff, some relaxation. When was the last time I'd taken a real vacation? I couldn't even remember. The months passed. I heard occasional updates about Whitney through the Richmond grapevine. She'd found a second part-time job, was working about 35 hours a week combined. She'd moved into a studio apartment in Lakeside, one of the rougher areas of town, all she could afford on her salary. Her social circle had largely abandoned her, tired of the drama and the victim narrative. Patricia had apparently given her an ultimatum about finding full-time work and moving out, though I didn't know if she'd followed through. I didn't particularly care anymore. That chapter of my life was closed. 6 months after that Wednesday night phone call, I was having coffee at a shop in Libby Mill. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was reading through some work emails on my laptop, enjoying the peaceful routine I'd built for myself. That's when I saw her walk past the window. She looked tired and stressed, probably from dealing with the reality of supporting herself on 2 part-time jobs. She saw me through the glass, and I nodded politely. She looked away quickly and kept walking. I sat there thinking about how that night had actually been the best thing that ever happened to me. She'd freed me from a relationship I hadn't even realized had become toxic. Her attempt to humiliate me for entertainment had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Instead of getting laughs from her friends, she'd lost her marriage, her financial security, her social circle, and her family's respect. But more importantly, she'd given me my life back. I'd learned something valuable about respect, boundaries, and self-worth. When someone shows you they don't value you, believe them the first time. Don't wait for them to prove it over and over again. As I drove home that evening, I felt grateful. Grateful for her honesty that night, even if she hadn't intended it to be honest. Grateful for the courage to believe her words. And grateful for the chance to build a better life without someone who saw my dignity as negotiable. She'd wanted drama and entertainment. Instead, she'd given me freedom and peace. Sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't revenge at all. It's simply choosing to respect yourself enough to walk away. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.